Well, I'm looking at the guidelines that Greg printed for us here, and for commercial examples, it says occasional brew pub and microbrewery specials. It doesn't even name a single beer
For American Pils.
Classic
American Pilsner.
Yeah.
That
So,
gives you free reign.
there you go.
Could be anything.
Just should taste like corn. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's something that's really unique to American Pilsners or lagers, is that I mean, and you guys have probably heard me talk about this a million times, is that you know the reason that Americans drink the cheapest beer in the world. There's no doubt about it. It is what it is, and the reasoning behind that is because we had that unique time in our American history that was Prohibition, right?
Well, I think if you travel to South America, you'll find a lot of that kind of stuff too. They're having a little bit of a beer renaissance.
Well, I think a lot of that is just trickled down from the U.S. though too,
and they have a lot of European influence over there too.
Right.
A lot of Germans and Italians and that kind of thing after World War I and World War II
right.
brought a lot of influence down to South America. And like when I was in Brazil, they're very, very light beers. I can't hear myself. I don't know if anybody else can hear me.
No, we can't because
no. My chicken.
God said, "Don't chomp your chicken."
I don't have any more chicken. Yeah, but
no,
the dude brings chicken in here and gives it to me, and then he's like,
goes, "Don't chomp your chicken."
Yeah, like you're doing right now.
No. I would just say that. Look at this. I mean, from our unique period in history,
yes,
we were not able to make beer legally for, what was it, 10, 12 years, something stupid like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, the thing that's amazing to me is that there was I think 2,000 plus breweries in the United States. We were a small population back then too, but after after Prohibition, well, we had 2,000 plus breweries.
13 years.
Is it 13 years? Okay. Well, there you go. I think it was 10 plus years.
Well, and that,
but anyway,
to your point, it was much like Europe before Prohibition, where it was regional.
Right.
You drank the beer that was in your area.
Well, not only that, is that I think the biggest effect on American beer was after the fact. Because most of the people that were brewing the beers were Europeans. I mean, they came from, they were Germans for the most part. But after Prohibition, in order for these breweries to get started back up, they had to make beer extremely cheap. Well, not only did they have to make it cheap to get started up again, they had to make it cheap for people to be able to afford it because everybody's broke.
Well, also, now you're down to a few hundred breweries instead of over 2,000 breweries.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to be able to pump out a lot of beer to cover large geographical areas that they had to supply. So they had to brew to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
They had to brew something that a large amount of people would like, rather than your regional brewery putting out,
for sure.
much like Germany, I think, is a really good analog to it, because you look at Dusseldorf and Köln and all these areas that have their own specific style, and people have been drinking that for a long time.
But I got to tell you, in all those areas, Pils still reigns dominant. Even though
and we've seen that when we've looked at other styles too, that every country has their own answer to Pilsner.
Yeah.
Before Prohibition, that's kind of what it was, is you drank the beer from the brewery that was around you. And so you grew up with that, and those areas grew up with that, and that's what they knew. I don't know what you're pointing at.
No chicken from me.
There's a couple behind you.
Yeah. So after Prohibition, when there was
chicken,
fewer
beer.
breweries having to supply beer to more people than there were before Prohibition, they just had to brew the lowest common denominator, and that's what kind of watered down the beer. And actually, the Busch family, the was run in Anheuser-Busch, they wrote a biography on them several years ago, and they were talking about how actually that corn and rice were more expensive than barley back then. They actually kept that in the beer because they thought it improved the quality of it. They were looking for specifically what that contributed to the beer, corn in particular.
At the time, it was much more expensive to produce than barley because it required more water and more land.
Right, exactly, yeah. And so, they didn't do that because it was the cheapest thing to do. They did it because they were trying to achieve a specific result. And part of that result was being able to appeal to a very wide range of people to supply a much larger area than they ever had to before.
People that like rice and corn?
People that like rice and corn, yeah.
Okay.
For a more regional example, I looked up not too long ago because I was looking for houses and I went down a rabbit hole. I found the original commercial brewer for Texas was based out of LaGrange. And
Where is that?
Stone
Got a
knows
lot of
where that
nice
is.
girls down there.
Yes. Everyone who knows ZZ Top knows where LaGrange is.
That's not
They
true.
got a
I
lot
have no
of
idea
nice
where it
girls.
is. I am aware that they sang about it.
But you know there's a lot of nice girls down there.
that's true, yeah.
All right. Well, the original commercial brewer there had a cellar, and he made bluff beer because it was bluffs overlooking the city of LaGrange, and it was a natural underground cavern that he
So like
cellared in.
Keller beer then, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no recipes for it anymore because it was all destroyed for Prohibition.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's one of those things.
Yeah,
that
so
couldn't
Prohibition
bring
really
back.
hit the reset switch on us.
Yeah.
And that's why when we talk about American Pilsners, I personally just think it's almost like a footnote in the Pilsner discussion because American Pilsner is almost an insult to Pilsner.
It's something that came about since 1933.
Yeah. So that's why we started with the German, and we got Jeremy coming back here. I'd like to hear from Jeremy what your approach is in terms of fermentation, because that's really what determines a great Pilsner is how you handle your fermentation.
Well,
A lot of it, I would
let's
think.
bust out that beer.
Okay.
You got some of it?
So, yeah. As far as my fermentation, I generally like to start 49 pitch at
Let's start off with
49.
what yeast you use.
Okay, so the one I've had the best, that I think produces the best one I've done is the Omega Byron Lager.
Okay.
I've done all the dry.
So that's a recent development.
Yeah,
that's a new
recent. This is the one we're gonna taste tonight. I've done the 3470.
Dry.
A successful Pilsner. With
Right.
that. I was
Yeah,
really
yeah,
happy with that one.
great. And I really think with dry, it's nothing against Fermentus. I think you need to have 3 packs of yeast. Dry.
Oh, I would
per
absolutely think so, yeah.
5 gallons. I've done 2. I've done 10 gallons and split batched, and then had 5 gallons that it was great, tasted fantastic. And then my other 5 gallons, which I treated the same way, the little acetyl that just would not go away. So I've done 3470 S23, but
Have
I
you done
would
the
say
189?
I have done the Swiss lager strain, which produces a little. I wouldn't say it would push it into German Pils range.
Right.
But
See, and what you're saying, I don't want to say anything bad about Fermentus, but you have to use
I'm
3
not.
packs.
No, it's great.
Personally, I feel like that's a plus
Yeah.
for Fermentus.
Yeah.
Because you can buy 3 packs of that yeast for a little
And-
bit more than it costs to buy 1 pack of liquid yeast. And you don't have to make a gigantic starter because, plain and simple, if you're using liquid yeast, you better have at least a 5-liter
and
Erlenmeyer flask.
now the great thing with the Omega strain, I pitched 2. Well, okay, so I pitched 2 packs into a Hellas, and that I didn't do a starter or anything. And the next beer I did with that same yeast rinse was my German Pils, which I did do a little starter before, and it kicked off like a rocket. But with the Omega yeast, 2 packs, you're safe. You don't need to do a starter, I would say. I mean, it's probably better
Let's talk a little bit, too, about what you mean by kicking off like a rocket in terms of lager yeast, because that's different than what people are used to with ale yeast.
So with lagers, and I will say, like, a lot of people get freaked out. Maybe you may not notice any activity, airlock, within 48...
Bubbles.
Yeah, bubbles, 48 to 72 hours, or, well, maybe my math's right, 72 hours. And I didn't freak out about that.
Chicken is amazing.
What'd you say? What the hell was that?
Stubby's having an experience with chicken.
Yeah, it's just a general lag phase, reproduction phase. I think you're going to see with lagers. It's just not going to kick off like an ale yeast.
Slower, right?
It does. And once it kicks off, just with the ale, I've noticed that even with a lag phase, reproduction phase. I think you're going to see.
What the fuck?
The dry. The dry and
Bear with us. This is the first time we're doing this.
Cool. So with the dry yeast and that first pitch of the Omega 2 packs, it did stay consistent with the 48 to 72 hours before you see a Krausen. Now, with the second gen doing a little starter, I would say within 48 hours, it's raring to go. I mean, you're seeing it.
Even that with an ale yeast, you would start thinking, "Hey, is this ever going to kick off?"
Yeah,
But
right.
with a lager yeast, that's a standard thing.
It is
You're
worrying.
Had a couple days for it to really get up and going.
And Jeremy, here's one of the things I think is really cool about Omega, and I love this. I love this yeast company, and here's the reason why: is because a lot of people will say, "Hey, we're going to give you 1.5 million sales per package." Well, they take it a little step further than that. They think, okay, well, you're going to do a lager.
You mean 100 billion?
Well, 1.5 billion, whatever the fuck.
And what what I understand, even with their lager strain,
they're putting
what I
almost
read online,
4 billion.
That should be good enough for even a lager 5-gallon batch. Now, I would have tried it, but this was for Bluebonnet, so I was like, I'm just going to double up and make sure I have enough.
here's the thing that I would encourage anybody. The coolest thing about them, though, is that they say, hey, you're going to do a lager. They may give you 400 billion sales rather than 1.5, right? So the good news is that, you're getting almost 4 times more than what you would with a Y yeast or a White Labs pack of sales. So,
and that's in line with what you need for lager yeast compared to ale yeast.
Right, and so they may only give you 1.5 for an IPA strain or a Chico yeast strain, but they're going to give you that much bigger for a lager strain that you need in order to make that particular.
Yeah.
And I think it's an absolute bargain if you actually look at it.
It really is. Yeah, you're right. And it's we talk a lot about this in terms of temperature and how quickly and how slowly things happen. And just like as far as aging beer goes, fermenting beer is the same type of thing. When you get down to those lower temperatures, you're talking about 49 degrees is where you start off at?
Yeah, and I'll let it just free rise to about 50.
From there. So chemical reactions happen faster in warmer temperatures, and that's why we talk about aging beer. If you don't want your beer to age, you keep it colder. Same thing is true with fermentation. Fermentation just happens slower. The yeast are less active, and they work slower in a cooler environment.
Yeah,
that's just something that you have to be prepared for with a lager fermentation, is that it's going to take longer for them to take off and do their thing. It's going to take longer for them to do their thing completely. And then also, let's talk about the diacetyl rest part of it, because you've got to warm them up a little bit for them to finish doing their thing.
Yeah, so now we're kind of getting into a long-winded deal.
That's what we're here for.
Okay. So what I typically do, it's not Tasty McDowell from the Brewing Network won't claim that it's his idea. So I kind of I do the fast lager method.
Really?
I've been
So-
wanting to hear more about this for a while.
Yeah.
Please tell me more.
So, you can measure when it's about 50% attenuated, you're cranking up maybe, I think he does 2 degrees every 12 hours up to his diacetyl rest, which will typically be a couple days. But I kind of take it 2 degrees every 24 hours because I'm not in a typical rush to get there. I mean, I have beer in my
Let's take
can.
a quick step backwards here and kind of talk about exactly what we're talking,
Okay.
what we mean by diacetyl rest and all that. When you're brewing with an ale yeast, you're not concerned with the diacetyl rest because you're already in a temperature range where your yeast are still active. So all yeast, to some degree, put off diacetyl during the fermentation process. It's a byproduct of fermentation. And as long as the yeast are still active, once they have finished consuming the sugars, then they will start to consume some of the byproducts that they've given off, diacetyl being the main one.
Right.
That they'll do. Acetaldehyde is another one. And so the yeast need to still be active to do that. We don't need to worry about that much with ale yeast because you are in a warmer temperature range where they stay active. With lager yeast, you have to be careful because if you stay in those lower, high 40s, low 50s range, the yeast will consume the sugars and then they'll go to sleep and they'll stop doing what they're doing. And they'll leave you with a bunch of diacetyl and or acetaldehyde.
Right.
And so what you're looking to do is as they finish up their fermentation, you're looking to raise the temperature to keep them active so that they will then
Clean up.
consume the byproducts that they've given off.
Right.
So that's
what-
the reason that I get that butter in my Cinemark 12 Amber Ale.
So what you're talking about
That's
is
one of your
is a
best
fast
beers.
lagering method.
Yeah, but I mean, typically
I
that's
like them beers that make your feet stick to the floor.
fast lager. But even with the fast lager method, you're still gonna do the same exact process that you would if you're doing a traditional lager.
Well, it's a different.
We're just
set
getting
of
there a
steps
little
to get to
quicker.
the same end result. So normally, what you might do with a lager is let it get to a certain point in the fermentation where you feel like it's gone through the
Right.
sugars, and then raise the temperature to then keep it active.
Yeah.
So it cleans up after itself.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about you're probably 4 weeks primary fermentation and 6 weeks lagering time normally. Is that about right?
I've never even 4 weeks. Usually, typically, even if I've done the traditional method versus the fast lager, and honestly, it's still within like a 2 week time.
2 week.
frame.
Okay. But the fast lagering method, and a lot of people call it the tasty method because
yeah,
he's been
yeah.
an advocate of it. He'll be the
Right.
first one to tell you he didn't come up with it, but he's an advocate of it. Is to watch your fermentation and your attenuation,
Yeah.
and as you hit a certain point, to start ramping your temperature up, and you're just shortening that initial fermentation time.
Right.
You
yeah.
know, to me, the fast lagering method makes a lot of sense.
I agree,
When you actually look at the physics behind it or the chemical reactions and all of that different stuff, it makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
However,
You have to get at the core of why you're treating your lager yeast
Right.
the way you are, and that is that lager yeast at warmer temperatures throw off all kinds of crazy off temperatures.
Yeah.
and I think
flavors.
that's the
All
biggest
flavors.
problem that I've had over the years doing lagers is that I'm not disciplined enough unless I had some kind of pre-programmed temperature controller from for my fermenter. To
But
me,
is there
it's been
such a
difficult. You know, I mean, I'm not disciplined enough to go every day and go, I'm going to turn it down 2 degrees.
Well,
and
and
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Sometimes I won't even measure the gravity. I will just wait to where I see the Krausen just kind of fall.
Right. Okay.
And then I'll start, and that's typically about 4 to 5 days. Start slowly raising up 2 degrees at 24 hours until I get to 63, 65. And then that's 63, 65 is when you're going to hit your diacetyl rest.
And one of the reasons I just wanted to point this out because Jeremy works at the shop on Sundays occasionally, but he's a great, fantastic brewer. But one of the things I would say is that these last 2 beers that he made, I think, are freaking world class,
absolutely fantastic.
And the reason that I wanted to have you on it, because I really wanted you to convey to people what your process is, and give us some of your secrets. Because if you don't win something at Blue Bonnet this year, the judges are dumb.
I'm just glad you
they're
guys
pretty
like
dumb
my beer.
anyway.
That's great.
But anyway,
Good
burn the place
but
down.
I mean, there's not. I wouldn't say there's really any secrets. I've brewed. Oh God,
I think there's a big
since
secret.
2010.
I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, it's
It's a process.
fermentation.
It has to do with this malt that you're using.
Well, yeah, there is that. But fermentation temperature control. I mean, it all comes back to just knowing your equipment, knowing your process, knowing you got to do something over and over, know how a yeast reacts, works in your brewery. I mean, this is the first time I've used that Byron lager, but
man, that's a great.
it is
strain.
great. And I will say, if you're going to go the dry route, I've done all of them, and I will
All of
say
them, yeah.
Mangrove Jack's Bavarian lager strain.
It's
If you're
really
going to go
good.
dry,
Yeah,
it's a great yeast.
it really is. I agree with you. I really agree.
love
with you.
that one. I think they used to have a Munich lager a couple.
Yeah,
years
that
ago.
one is good as the Bavarian lager.
Yeah, no.
This one they have now is
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's good, and with that one, you only need 2 packs. Not,
Well, the thing that to me that kind of nails it for you, Jeremy, on this one, I really think it is the yeast.
yeah,
I mean, man, it is perfect.
yeah.
Right?
I
And the
love
reason
that
I say
yeast.
that is we've had all of these German styles tonight, dude.
There's
they-
literally nothing
Different.
that you can knock it for.
no.
If you sat down and really analyzed it, it hits every single mark.
Yeah.
It really does.
Well, I'm just saying that
if
if you
ever-
would have lined these up with all these German ones, I could not have picked this one out.
well, I'm telling you, if ever there was a 50-point beer that I judged,
I don't know about
th-
that, man.
No,
was gonna give
I'm
it
dead
26.
serious. I'm dead serious that I can't find a single thing that I would detract points from.
Well, I mean,
Thank you.
I think even Nigel would probably say this is an unbelievable German Pils, other than it's German.
All right.
So
There you go.
I'd say I'd give it a 26.
But the main thing, it's just there
It's like, you fucker.
for home brewers. I don't know why so many of us are in it. I was like this, and I've been brewing. It took me 5 years to start brewing a lager. Why you are scared of this? Like,
Right.
What?
well, I'll tell you one reason.
if you have temperature control, there's no reason for you to not brew a
But
lager.
if you have
Or attempt
more than,
it.
a big enough system to do 2 beers at one time, and you're constantly, every other
Yeah.
week starting something else new,
That is freaking
then you have to
amazing.
stop doing
it's
something
unreal.
else.
yeah, but
to
that's
do
all about
a
planning.
lager for a long time.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
it-
all about planning. If you're going to
It's
get into
planning.
your lager season and you can do lager after lager after lager, you're good.
Yeah.
If you're going to hop between ales and lagers,
Because
you've got to have 2 separate compartments.
I will say, like, when I first tried my first German Pils or Helles, I didn't have the space. So to do my diacetyl rest, I
take it out of your chamber.
took it out, put it in a spare bathtub, and let it raise up. And
And see,
5
see,
days,
that's the thing.
taste
It's
it.
the
Rich guy
time.
with
The
a
timing of the
spare
diacetyl
bathtub.
rest, I think, is the crucial part
Right.
of lager brewing.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And for me, I have a hard time tasting diacetyl, and so that's why my first lager was a disaster.
Right.
Because I brewed it and tasted it and thought, hey, this is pretty good.
yeah.
And
But-
then I gave it to somebody, and they're like, dude, that is chock full of diacetyl. Matt Westlake actually was
Yeah,
like, dude, that's full of diacetyl.
Yeah, and it's
Who the
all
hell's
about
he?
And I'm just going to
Tasting your
give you
beer.
some major props here, Jeremy. This is the most authentic German
Oh, thank
Pilsner
Yeah, absolutely. Without a
made by a
doubt.
home brewer that I've
yeah.
ever tasted.
And
I mean, it just tastes like
Well,
it
thank
just
you.
tastes just like any of these other ones you're drinking.
and a lot of that, I do use strictly RO water. I'm not saying that it's
Right.
bright, wrong.
Well, that's a very good segue into
absolutely.
talking about
I
because
think
the
that's
water
a
profile is
huge-
essential to
yeah.
to,
Yeah.
to Pilsner. You
Huge.
need a very soft water profile.
away.
Yeah.
I've brewed one Pilsner. It turned out actually pretty good,
Nigel's
even
is
though
a-
I
yeah.
missed out on the flame out hops. But I also started with RO water and built back as opposed to everything else I've ever done,
Right.
which is start with base water and then and since
Throw
I've
some
added
English shit
additions-
in it.
See, and
Right.
what I did, I've brewed two Pilsners before. One was a diacetyl bomb, and the other one was very good. And what I did was, this was before I had any analysis of my water or anything. I knew it was medium hard. It was Fort Worth water, which is real good. I just diluted it halfway
right.
with
And-
distilled water.
Yeah,
And that's a good way if you're
for sure.
wanting to get into it and try it. That's a good way to start. you know?
Well,
Because,
I'll just say this: I brewed this style of beer probably 40 plus times, and I've never gotten that close. So kudos to you, dude.
Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
oh, absolutely.
Thank
That's
you.
an outstanding beer.
No,
And the reason being is I really appreciate this style. This is one of my favorite styles ever.
And- yeah, me too.
And if I have the opportunity, if I a lot, and you'll see me if I go to the T&P Tavern, I'll go in and I'll go, hey, ooh, that's new. Ooh, that's new. Oh, cool. Let me try a sample of that. But
Then you go right
Right
back,
back
to,
to the-
yeah, I'll
Django
go to
Lancer.
Dinkelacker or
Yeah.
you know, the German Pilsner.
I gotta say, this
Or
Dinklacker
Bangor
is underwhelming.
it is a little bit. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. It's
Very
probably
sessionable, though.
it's probably because the same place I bought it was the place I bought the last beers
Oh.
from the last.
It's just
that shall not be named.
it doesn't
It's
have a lot of
old.
character to
It's
it.
old.
It's kind of
It's an
It's
age.
You can tell.
thin-bodied.
It's
Yeah,
an aged Pilsner.
I hate to say it. It's old.
It's a mellowed
Yeah.
Pilsner.
Aluminum aged Pilsner.
Yeah, it's
Well,
really
it ought to really be aluminium, but it's not, is it?
it really
You know?
is old. You know, I mean, it just
God, I
it,
hate
it is what it is.
Europeans,
But
I swear to God.
well, the problem is
Only
that
because they're so far away.
And we're
I mean,
so
it's like people
right.
in Mississippi.
There are
and they're
not
just-
enough
they're too far
letters
away.
in there to be aluminium.
Sure,
You're
it is.
adding letters.
Hang on.
I just really wished freaking Elon Musk would make the Hyperloop to Europe.
Your
know, so-
monkey's gonna
There we
die.
go. There we go. See, again, we need our fight monkeys.
Yeah.
Yours
This-
can use an aluminium
Do you,
sword.
do
and
you
mine
call
can-
it? Do you call it magnesium?
Magnesium?
No,
you
why
call
would
it-
I do that?
Do you call it helium?
No, those have the appropriate letters in there for the eum.
Uh-huh. And,
Aluminum does not,
and why should aluminium be any different?
because it doesn't
Because it
have
doesn't
the
have
ni-
the
right
M.
letters in it to be
I-
pronounced that way.
IUM.
IUM?
Aluminium, helium,
IUM is in
magnesium,
aluminum?
titanium.
It's not.
They're all IUMs. Why would aluminium
Aluminum
be
is
any
not an
different?
IUM.
There's no
Aluminium
IUM
is
in
missing
aluminum.
a second set of them, though.
Oh,
Nigel.
you
Exactly.
English son of a bitch.
Which is why you took. Why did you just take the I out of aluminium?
There's no I in aluminum.
no I in it.
But why is that? But you took it. You didn't take it out of helium. You didn't take it out of titanium.
We
or
didn't take it out of aluminum either. It's not there.
It is. It is there. It's aluminium. IUM.
Yeah, and there's an R on the end of vanilla also, right?
Where's my
Vanilla.
Where's my monkey? I want to throw some at.
Eric's having too much fun in there. Okay, let's try and bring this back. into
Vanilla.
discussion
The
here.
aluminum has two
Vanilla.
U's and two
Do
I's.
do we have some more German styles here to taste
we do.
and kind of talk
We ha-
about before we get into the
I
Czech
poured
version
something
of
I
it?
didn't
Yeah.
check to see what it was.
That's not. That's
You
a
didn't
line Pilsner.
check to see.
I didn't check to see.
Ooh,
We
I'm
do
drinking-
have
I'm
one
drinking
other
more
German
of Jeremy's.
Pilsner.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I've got some Munich Helles
Look
here.
at that.
Warsteiner.
I'm telling you,
Warsteiner is one of my very favorites.
Look at how freaking clear that shit
gorgeous,
is.
isn't it?
That's.
It's
It's
the
not
Pamela
only-
Anderson.
I'm not telling you, Jeremy. Not only is it a great tasting beer, it is a beautiful.
Thank you.
It's absolute
you
beautiful.
want to take it out
beer.
behind
And
the
it
middle
should
school
be.
and get it pregnant.
Now, I will
Wouldn't
say,
you say that that's
That's a
beautiful?
little dirtier than I would go for such a clear beer.
you know, everybody
look
can say whatever they want about the time. I mean,
It's average.
the time does help. But I have done a German Pils in 21 days, from dough in to pouring it in the glass. if you're not
That's fast.
if
Yeah.
you're not
Fast.
afraid to use a little bit of some gelatin.
Ingenuity.
I'm a big proponent of gelatin. I think
I
it's
love
great.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't use it in this one, but why? Okay, so my problem is with Pilsners, and there's all this stigma about this is the way they did it freaking 300, 200 years ago. Yet homebrewers and breweries are coming up with all these different processes to turn beer, and I don't know, maybe I'm using the wrong words, just invent.
Yeah.
Why are we stuck in that? Like, why does a Pilsner have to be lagered for 6 weeks? Why is it supposed to take 2 months? Because that's what people tell us.
Well,
and I will say, my 21-day Pilsner was better after about 6 weeks in the keg. I'm not denying that.
well, and I think a lot of it, Jeremy, you have to look at German culture.
Well, yeah, I get that, but
and they're a stickler for
Yes.
tradition.
They're a stickler
and-
for everything.
Well, I'm just saying that
There's nothing they're not sticklers about.
But I'm just saying that is a big part of everything that they do is it has to do with tradition.
To be fair, it's hard to argue with the results.
I agree.
well, yeah,
because whether it's manufacturing or food or any of the stuff they do, they do what they do very, very well.
Yeah. I
So
agree.
it's tough to argue with them sometimes on these things, but
yeah.
I think as homebrewers, that's the beauty of what we're doing is we're
Right.
able to try a couple of other things, and I completely agree with you.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
able to step outside the box.
But
Right.
but half of that in getting there is tasting your beer, like
Yes.
throughout the
All
process.
It's all about the
So,
result.
when you're doing a diacetyl rest, taste your beer. Don't trust the 3 or 4 days what some recipe tells you. Taste your beer, and then you'll know it's ready, and you can keg it. And I say you could, even without using gelatin, go a couple days in the keg, let it settle, jump it to another keg, and you'll have a significantly clearer beer. It's just, I don't know.
The point there too also is that the clarity is an
And that's
absolute
very
must
important.
in this beer.
Yeah.
It is.
Yes, I agree.
And it's not a visual thing. The visual part is a component
Yes.
of it,
Yes.
but it does affect the quality of the beer to
Well,
make sure that
yeah.
it is brilliantly clear. I'm
That's
sorry,
what-
it does.
Oh
That's-
no, I'm not saying Pilsner's got to be. If you're pouring a hazy Pilsner, it's wrong.
and it's not just going to be because it looks that way. That haze is going to affect
The flavor.
that beer
Flavor,
drinks. It
yeah.
does.
What if it's,
Well,
if
and
it's
here's
a New
what's
England
really
Pilsner?
that's what's really funny too is that this Dinkel Acker is recent back into our market. It hasn't
This
been.
seems to
Haven't
me
seen
like
that.
the beer that you would give a Bud Miller Coors drinker and say this is German beer.
It's
It's
really,
very light bodied. The flavor is washed out in it. It's
I think that's because it's old. I mean, I really do.
do you? I
Yeah,
mean, it's,
yeah.
I don't get the impression of old. I just get the impression of
Well, the hops are gone.
bland.
They're gone. Yeah, and
Okay.
and so
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for sure.
no, this is actually one of my favorite German pilsners. I like that beer. I like it a lot, and even in Germany, it's fantastic. But
You know, the Warsteiner that we've got on the table here, I think is one of the very few that it's easy to get very fresh.
yeah,
I don't know
and
why.
I've had that really old too. I mean, I've had some that taste like cardboard.
I
but-
had it show up at Costco by my house, and I bought it, and it
I think
was
you're okay.
super fresh. I mean,
I think you're okay buying anything at Costco because
yeah, they turn it so
you have-
quickly. Yeah,
you have 20 different beers there. They're going to turn it quick.
yeah.
So I just opened a Danish lager,
A Danish.
a Danish Pilsner.
Now,
That's a.
If
That's a
I'm not
crap
mistaken-
Somebody
cheese.
bought it, so somebody's got to drink it.
if I'm not mistaken, lager yeast was named after this brewery. Am I
Yeah.
wrong about that? Carlsbergeness,
Carlsberg.
something.
Carlsbergenish. Yeah.
Are you mocking me? I feel like he's mocking me.
I'm not mocking you.
You should feel that way.
He's mocking me while I have this
mocking
beer
you.
in my hand
not
that I
mocking
could
you.
or could not pass to my left.
I'm not mocking you, man.
pour a little bit more, I think.
Yeah. Hey, that ones are good, dude.
It is.
Ass.
Hold.
But I guess I just want homebrewers not to be afraid of lagers. Like,
Yeah, you know the biggest problem I think with this, Jeremy, is that I think the biggest problem, the biggest enigma for homebrewers and lagers is first the process,
Yeah.
and the second thing is patience.
yeah,
You got to have patience, and if you don't have patience and you don't have space, I mean, ultimately, what I think is the biggest problem with people doing lagers is that a lot of times they got a fermentation fridge that can hold one beer,
yeah,
and they get in there and they're trying to make a lager and they don't do their cuts right, or they don't do their fermentation steps correctly, or they don't do the beer or the brewing portion of it, or even the recipe for that matter.
yeah.
And holy shit, they spent 6 to 8 weeks to make this beer and it's garbage.
Yeah.
You know, and
I wouldn't recommend a first year homebrewer
yeah,
to do a lager.
it's just tough.
You got to know
tough.
your system,
Yeah.
your malt, your yeast.
And I think you've got to get to the point to where you're not just brewing one beer at a time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
think you've got it, because when I used to do lagers a lot, what I would do is I would brew it, ferment it for 2 weeks, and then I would stick it in a keg and just forget about it in my
Right.
kegerator. I would just basically do the lagering period. Just put it in a keg, put it in my kegerator, and maybe put some CO2 on it and just forget about it.
Do the secondary and the lager.
Yeah,
all in the
after
keg.
2 weeks, I would just
Right.
stick it in the kegerator and just leave it in there. Now, I think it takes longer for it to mature that way. But for me, I had a big keezer, and it was just like, hey, man, I'm just going to
Right.
dump it in
Simpler,
there
yeah.
and forget about it.
Yeah.
And then it might actually be 3 months, 4 months, 5 months later, I actually tap into it and go, oh, my God, it's great now.
Yeah.
But
So, for somebody that's brewed one Pilsner in his brewing, I won't call it a career, certain lifetime, just a couple of things.
since you've
just,
been a U.S. citizen.
yeah, kind of. But a couple of things. So, either a large starter, dry yeast, or a couple of packs of Omega.
It's all about the yeast. I will say.
Man, I'm telling you,
If
dude. I'm telling you, Jeremy, dude, you have brewed some amazing beers over the years. I'm not telling you. I'm not kidding you. He's brewed amazing lagers. I think the secret weapon is that Omega.
Yeah, I think it's that
Holy
Augustiner
shit.
Well,
strain.
It's
let me
amazing.
ask a controversial one here, okay?
Okay.
Because I know it's not impossible, but
It's
more
possible.
it's more
It's
difficult
plausible?
to
Boo.
brew this
It's
beer
plausible?
extract.
Implausible?
It's more difficult to brew a Pilsner extract than it is all grain.
I don't think so.
I've never tried that.
Okay,
but
well,
Here's the reason why.
let's talk about that a little
All
bit.
right, well, here's the reason being.
it
is
sounds
because,
more difficult to me.
I think if you get dry DME Pilsner malt, I don't think you have a problem with brewing this style
Okay,
of beer.
well, there we go. And why is that?
I would never use liquid.
Okay, elaborate.
Because I think you have darkening, oxidation
Well,
possibilities.
that's the first thing that came to my mind is that
Absolutely.
it's difficult to get a very light.
But
colored yellow
I
beer
can
with
I can
extract.
promise you with DME, no problem.
Okay.
With Pilsner or extra light DME, I don't think you have. A
Will
problem at all.
you run into any attenuation issues?
No, not unless you overboil it.
Okay. So you probably want to keep your boil restrained.
You boil restrained full boil. You got to do a full boil.
Yeah, you can't do a partial boil.
No.
Okay.
Right.
No partial boil.
So
Okay.
you're saying
None.
there wouldn't be any additional grains that you use in the extract? It would be just straight
I don't
from the
think. Yeah, I don't think you need to.
No, I would definitely
and-
think you just do straight Pilsner.
And here's the
DME.
reason.
Yeah.
Here's the reason I say that it is capable. I've had many people bring me in stuff that they use just like 6 or 8 pounds of Pilsner DME and rock solid beers. Rock
Okay.
solid, light colored, beautiful. I just don't. Here's the thing: liquid malt extract. I think it's possible. I really do.
But it better be really fresh.
Really, really fresh. But here's the thing: is that we experienced this even when we were pumping out 4 or 5 barrels of Pilsner liquid malt extract. We'd still per week. You know, we were still coming across stuff that had, it darkened too early.
And that's something that I don't know that everybody understands exactly the impact of what you're saying. Those barrels are big barrels of extract.
180 pounds.
180 pounds. They're huge. So going through 4 or 5 of those in a week.
Yeah.
That means that extract is coming in and it's not sitting at all.
Zero.
That comes off, it gets put under CO2 and pushed, and it still has some issues. So there's a big difference between the liquid and the dry.
Well,
that's why.
That's why one of the
Texas brewing kits have gone to dry instead of liquid.
Yeah, that's a big reason. And one of the things that really drove me crazy is that I could pull one off, and I think a lot of it has to do with how. And here's the biggest thing, and I'm going to say this as a homebrew store owner and as a aficionado of making homebrewed beer, and this is going to be a big point. It may piss some people off, but here's the reality: is that, and I've learned this over the years because I used to be a small homebrew store, okay. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that I may not get the freshest stuff that's available to homebrewer or to brewers in general, okay, as a small homebrew store, right? And I fought and I struggled with this because one of the things that you'll learn about my store and my homebrew experience is that I don't carry anything that I don't agree with or anything that I wouldn't use myself at home. I had somebody ask me about a certain product, and I was like, "Hey, man, I don't carry this product because I don't agree with it. I don't think it's a great product, so that's why we don't carry it."
Can I interject a little bit?
No.
Go ahead.
Having asked Stubby why he didn't carry cheap Chinese stuff several times because it's cheaper and it's available from China quick, he has said on multiple occasions, "I've seen that fail so many times."
Yeah.
But it is not worth me carrying.
That's not to say that we don't carry cheap Chinese shit.
Oh, no.
Because we do have some of that.
But sometimes there's not a good quality version of it.
Right, I agree. But
there's a judgment call to be made on everything is the point of that.
One of the things that I learned through my journey as a homebrew owner or a homebrew store owner is that we necessarily didn't get the most freshest product because we're buying through a third-party distributor. Okay, we weren't getting the we didn't even think about this, and I think most homebrewers don't think about this. Is that we were looking at we started pulling up our lot numbers on hops and stuff like that, and we're like, man, I just got this hop. These hops in, and wow, they're almost 3 years old now. Jesus. Wow, it's amazing. And then we just got them in stock. We didn't really think about those things, but what we've been able to do now is because we're doing more volume, we're doing more. We're able to supply you with the freshest ingredients possible because we're bypassing a lot of the distributors, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we're able to give you, and the reason a lot of that is because we've started supplying, craft brewers and stuff like that. They demand those fresh things, and the great thing about doing that is that we're able to supply home brewers with that same great quality ingredient that's fresh.
All right.
Yeah,
so
let's move on here.
Hang on before we go on.
Knowledge bomb.
So we've
bitches.
talked about malt and we've talked about yeast. We haven't talked about hops.
No, we left the hops out, and they're important.
So
Noble bitches.
It's easy to say on a German Pilsner, let's use noble hops. Easy to say that, but that doesn't get us.
Hallertau.
That doesn't get us to the variance of a Pilsner. If we're going to use Pilsner malt and we're going to use lager yeast, they're all very much standard type deals. So the variance has got to come in the hops, right?
Maybe.
Well, no, I disagree with that. I think
I just don't think English. I don't think guys that are from England can brew good German
the
Pilsner.
yeast is not standard.
Okay, so
there's a wide variation in the yeast.
So
I'm just
educate
fucking
me.
with you. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, no, tell me. Give me details.
I would really like to have a great German Pilsner pull through a freaking beer engine. Wouldn't that be amazing?
And one day you might get that if you educate me on the hops.
Well, I think ultimately you have to have something that's clean, crisp, and this is another thing that a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of people, I guess for us as Americans, don't understand hops in general from Europe. Okay, so a lot of times people hear Hallertau, right? Man, there's so many different Hallertauers, it would blow your freaking mind.
Yep.
I think we created
Hallertau just happens to be the region where these hops are grown. Okay, so you got Hallertau Mittelfrüh, which most of the time, if you hear Hallertau,
It's
Mittelfrüh,
right?
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they just kind of eliminate that. But you may have heard of Hirschbrucker, Tetnay, even Magnum
Gold.
is Hallertau.
Blanc.
You guys all heard of German Magnum, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a Hallertau.
That's all I better with.
It's a Hallertau Magnum. So you also have Tradition, Hirschbrucker. I mean, there's so many different ones that. But you also have like Satz, and you have any kind of noble hops, anything that imparts a clean spiciness. These are things that you use in any kind of German lager. You might use in any kind of German beer, period, and or Belgian beers, for that matter.
Well, and really the hop flavor in this beer is fairly easy to achieve, I think. I don't think that's a difficult thing to do. The bitterness is what you have to hit exactly right.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the most difficult thing to get right in most balanced continental beers.
Right.
Is the bitterness.
And
you're looking at a fairly narrow range here in terms of gravity and IBUs. So for a German Pilsner, you're looking at an original gravity between 1044 and 1050. That is a really narrow range.
Right.
You're not going to find many styles.
Here's the thing that I think was amazing to me, traveling through Europe, being a beer aficionado. I've been going to Europe for a long time, but it's only been the last 15 or so years that I've really analyzed, and I knew what the hell I was tasting and drinking and talking about. But I would say this, that the majority of people don't understand that most of these Pilsners are hoppy as hell, and they will blow your balls off.
Yeah.
In some respect, they're almost like a German IPA.
Yes, but
as compared to an English IPA.
Yeah,
they're a
but
German version of an English IPA.
But they're not like grapefruity. They're not like.
No. I'm talking about a German version of an English IPA.
Yeah,
they have hops in them that are meant to travel.
I mean, they're extremely hoppy.
Yeah.
They really are. I mean, really.
But the hops don't dominate the flavor, and that's the thing. When you talk about hoppy, well, the hop
That's
flavor.
debatable.
It's there, but you definitely get the malt as well.
Yeah, I think the malt should be the forefront.
When we talk about hoppy beers and hoppy flavor here in America, you talk about hoppy beers here, you're talking about you can't even tell that the malt is there. Pilsner malt comes through in Pilsners.
Honest to God, and this is I'm not disagreeing with you, but from the most, I would say a big portion of the beers that I've had when I go to Germany on a regular basis are in your freaking face hoppy. I mean, just like bam. I mean, just insane. And so I'm going to Nuremberg in November. That's going to be. I'm going to bring all German Pils back because I think that is a really good. I really want you guys to have a baseline
Can
for
I be
what
invited back?
for what they taste like, because I think you will be freaking amazed at how freaking hoppy these things are. I mean, it's insane. And hopefully I can make it over to Prague and bring some
Czech Pils.
bring some Czech Pils back, because I think you'll be blown away with Pilsner.
So
when
let's
you-
move over into Czech Pils, because that is on our list here to talk about. We
Right.
haven't gotten
Do we
into
have-
that
do-
at all.
Eric, do we have Czech Pils available?
Pilsner Raquel.
Yes, the one
There
that we
was
just passed
Pilsner,
around was Czech
and
Pils.
the Sierra Nevada is a
Which one? The FS?
Czech Pils.
The one we just passed around, I believe, is Czech Pils. And then
FS?
this,
Oh, this
Yeah.
bastard
No.
has lion.
No.
This one over here.
Okay. Because this FS that we just passed around, which is a Pilsner, but it's brewed in Turkey,
Very
tasted a lot like a Czech Pils to me. Again, I have a hard time with
How skunk-
diacetyl, but I thought I picked up some.
Yeah.
How skunky
Diacetyl.
was
I
that?
thought it
one?
tasted
Well,
like Czech Pils, but
and you guys,
Brandon, how,
man,
how
I've got-
skunky was it?
I've got to make it over to.
I didn't pay attention. To
I've
that,
got to
be
make it
honest.
over to Czech Republic, because I really got to bring some of these back for you guys to taste, because I think you would be freaking amazed at the butter. I think it would blow your freaking mind at how buttery these Czech Pilses
we'll
are.
bottle it, put it in a spray bottle, and put it on our popcorn.
I mean,
and it'll be
it tastes
fine.
like AMC 13 movie popcorn.
Is
dude.
that even Pilsner Kel? Is like that?
No, Pilsner Raquel's not like that.
Oh, okay.
No.
Speaking of which,
And I would say that the ones that are not like that are Pilsner Raquel and Staropramen. The rest of them taste like butter popcorn. I mean, even
It's important to
Budvar.
note that buttered popcorn is actually made with diacetyl. That is not
that
a
is.
comparison. It's a direct parallel.
They actually
to it.
make diacetyl to make
They
the
make
movie
diacetyl
popcorn.
on purpose, to make movie popcorn butter flavoring.
Now,
Yeah.
now, just to be clear, is that where you get the popcorn lung disease from?
Yes,
No.
it is.
Okay.
It's from inhaling diacetyl. Yeah, I posted.
Is it really?
Yeah, well, I posted an article about that one time.
You have popcorn lung from inhaling popcorn flavor?
Yes, in the factories where they make that stuff, if you inhale it too much, actually acetaldehyde is also a toxic substance for you to inhale.
what about
also.
popcorn ceilings?
Popcorn?
Yeah.
I scraped one of those last weekend.
That's
I
from
feel like it was
overcarbonated
very,
Czech Pilsners.
Popcorn Jones? Say what?
No, popcorn ceilings are from
Oh, okay,
overcarbonated
yeah.
Czech Pilsners.
and a little asbestos.
No, I'm telling you, the best two beers I had in the Czech Republic were Pilsner Raquel. And I swear to God, the SOB tasted like
The
IPA
two best you had were Pilsner Urquell?
and Staropramen.
Okay, all right.
And I don't I think Staropramen sucks balls here.
Brock
Um,
Brock respectfully disagrees.
You don't
I
like?
think there's any respectfulness in
Give the man a mic. Give the man a mic.
Budvar sucks balls.
Now he's got two mics.
Million mics.
Now we're getting pornographic here.
Easy, Tiger.
I had to disagree with that 100%. I thought the worst two beers that I had over there. I thought the Urquell was almost the Miller Lite of the Czech Republic.
Well, it depends on where you go, maybe.
Well, maybe so. I don't know. It's all over the Czech Republic.
Continue with your thought, man.
I had a
But
lot
eat the
of
mic.
good Pilsners.
You
I
gotta
had
eat the
a
mic.
bunch of really, really tasty Pilsners over there, and I didn't get butter out of half of them. I got some of that, yeah. But
Are
what
you-
I found was
are you
from
sensitive
order,
to
I
that?
could
You
go
may be
sensitive to
downstairs
it.
to the guy who was brewing down there while they had it, which was a cool thing. You go to a lot of places, and when they're out of beer, they're out of beer. Nobody cares. They just line up the next week or the next month when they
Right.
when they have beers. But I found wonderful Pilsners in the Czech Republic, man. I thought it was superior to Germany.
Really?
Whoa,
Wow.
that's a bold statement
That
there.
is a bold statement.
I liked it. When we
Fighting
went into
words.
the Czech Republic, the Cerny's and the
You were
beers
just
they
you were
had
just
over there.
mesmerized by all the beautiful women.
I'm just going to get a high five because my mum was born in the Czech Republic.
Oh my goodness!
I had a wonderful experience.
That's what's wrong
drinking
with
beer,
you.
and I spent a lot
Well,
of time all over the Czech Republic.
And also the
drinking beers.
Czechs never bombed your whole country. So, you know.
And also,
Yeah.
Well,
they put
those
R's,
guys drink more beers than anybody put together anywhere else. So
and the
there's-
Czechs put
there's
R's
that.
on the end
They
of
have
words.
beautiful women there. I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
Man, freaking amazing. I'm
Wow.
just saying.
We just like put the brakes on the whole conversation.
So
Yeah.
my,
I'm just talking about women. I'm not talking about the beer.
my fighting monkey's going to be
No,
wearing
I'm
Czech
telling
Where
you.
were you at?
National
What was your
costume.
experience
Prague.
there?
Prague.
And just in Prague?
Yeah. Well, Pilsen and Prague.
Yeah.
I'm super sensitive to like everything. So
So what would you say is the differentiating
feelings.
characteristic between a Czech Pilsner and a German Pilsner?
I would say that the German Pilsner is probably drier. More.
So there's more malt character in a Czech Pilsner?
No, I think it's hops.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's
just
Saaz.
It's
the
a
hop
different
Well, hops
hop
don't
difference.
make it drier.
Well, I'm just saying that the German Pilsner is probably a little drier, a little more crisp.
Man.
Most
It's a hop difference.
Jesus
I would
Christ.
say it's
I'm
more
trying to
hop
hold this
difference.
shit
I would just
together.
put
Yeah.
it down to Saaz.
Yeah,
I mean-
I think a lot of it is a hop difference. I think that
But the hop
the
difference,
yeast is different.
the
The
hop
yeast is
difference doesn't add
Well,
I mean,
diacetyl.
The yeast is
it's,
different.
It's the best two. It's the best two pilsners that there is, right? It's either a German or it's a Czech.
Okay.
And I think whatever your taste buds lean to, whether you like this.
Well,
sort of
it-
hop
Okay,
or
but
that
that's
sort
my
of
that's my
hops.
question: is what's the differentiation that you would lean to one?
I would definitely say it was that hop.
Yeah, hop.
And I think
I
in a
think
Czech
yeast
pilsner
character,
you get
too.
a
More floral.
more hop.
I think you get more yeast character from a Czech Pils.
Jesus Christ.
I would say you get
Whoa.
I would say you get more character from a Czech Pils from the yeast than you would from a German Pils. That's just me.
From the yeast? Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
But there's not
It's
to
not
say
quite as clean of
well,
how
and,
crispy.
here's the thing that you could probably line up if you actually sit there and you lined up Czech Pilsners and German Pilsners. Some of those you would probably pick out as Czech Pils, and they'd
There'd
be
be some
German.
crossover, mhm.
And, there's a lot of crossover there. There really is.
I would say as American that's never been to either one of these
Yeah,
countries,
I would agree.
that I think it, to me, it's just the Saaz. I mean, that's the only difference I can tell.
Saws matters.
Well,
Saaz matters.
you can
Saws lives matter.
diacetyl is
No, just
acceptable.
Saaz
Except-
Acceptable.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Diacetyl is
screwed
acceptable in
up
small
again, didn't
amounts, according to the BJCP. In Czech Pilsners, it's not acceptable at all. Zero in German Pils.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
So
can look at-
would you say that in general, diacetyl is kind of expected?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I would.
Just to some degree.
it's to
Maybe
some
not
degree.
necessarily heavily, but to
I'm
some
telling
degree.
you, dude. I probably had 30 different beers, and
That's more than
and-
two.
Yeah, in the Czech Republic,
It's 6
30
more
different
than two.
breweries. 30 different breweries, and there was 2 that wasn't a lot of butter.
Wow, that's
In the Czech Republic.
I'm not kidding you. Now I know you said that. I really would like you to go back now that you've had all these BJCP training,
That's true,
because
bro.
I think it would blow your mind.
He has had BJCP
Yes.
training. I can confirm that.
No, I'm just saying now that he's had it.
Yeah.
I think it would blow your freaking mind, because there's beers that I'm sure you really enjoyed
They're going to hate me.
Pre-training.
training,
Yeah.
and now you're gonna taste them. And you go, man, that's got a major freaking.
well, it
flaw."
all depends. That to me, the diacetyl thing
I hope that
is
doesn't
such
happen.
a person to person.
You know
thing.
what though?
It
I've
is.
never had a
pick
big.
up on some butter. I really do. You know, and like you said,
I don't.
It's mildly acceptable in some, and I don't really. If there's
Some people
if there's
don't-
a tad bit in there.
Yeah, a
I'm
lot of
okay
people.
with
A
it.
lot of people don't care for
If
it.
it-
I mean, that doesn't
if it's
bother
the-
them. Yeah.
If it's the hops that comes, that I think that's what I like about that Czech Pils so much is that it's got that hop like punch on there.
But it's the particular hop apparently, because the German
Well, maybe
pills have
so.
hops in there too.
well, and that's
Yeah.
my favorite hop. I put
Well,
that hop on everything.
and that's the thing. They're so close within style. I would assume that most people that are, man, national or better, if you lined up a majority of them across the board, most people couldn't tell the difference.
It's getting a line in here.
Let's go off the rails a minute here. I hope that extended knowledge of certain beers stops enjoyment of other beers.
Yeah,
See,
I would agree.
I don't think it does stop enjoyment of it.
You
You know what?
I mean, the more knowledgeable you come about
hey,
certain
there's
beers
not-
could
I
make
think,
you.
in my
Here's the
opinion,
thing.
it increases it.
Yeah, you can pick it
The
apart.
the
if
more
there's
I've
things you
learned
like
about how
it.
to taste beer and how to categorize things and how to look at them, the more I enjoy more styles. And one of the things I'll use an example of that is Belgian beers. In particular, Sam Adams at one point made this Imperial Belgian white beer that I had a hard time wrapping my mind around because I didn't know what the hell I was tasting. It was like 8 or 9% and had all these things going on in it. And as an inexperienced beer drinker, but I knew I liked craft beer and I was a brewer and that kind of thing, I was like, I'm not quite sure what to think of this. But once you're able to identify esters, phenols, malt, and all that kind of thing, it's easier to appreciate all of it in there. So,
and I think
it's
ultimately
also-
what we're getting at is if you have the opportunity, do some sort of training.
Yes,
palate
absolutely.
training.
But
if you have the ability, because
indeed, or
I
train
agree,
yourself with
but it's-
every beer that you have. Sit down and try to pick it apart. You know.
Yeah.
But there are some of them that are very hard to wrap your mind around if you don't know exactly
Indeed.
what you're
Yeah,
tasting.
I agree, but if you pick it apart, you might find something you don't like as an individual
Right.
element.
yeah, that's
But
true.
when you consider the whole beer, it's either hidden or it's left.
Well, and
But
here's a perfect example.
chances are you would have not liked that beer anyway, but not known why.
Yeah, but if it's just a part of the
Right.
beer,
Well,
it
here's
might-
a perfect
it might be
example.
subdued,
Here's
right?
a perfect example. When we were in Prague, Pilsner Urquell here is not necessarily something that I can. I mean, I drink it occasionally, but
Right.
it's not something that I go, "Oh my god!"
Oh, I love it, man. I buy pills.
But when I was over there, my mind was freaking blown. I mean, and you know,
Nigel.
There you go, it's Pilsner Urquell.
but I would say that you know, I had actually had Budvar here that I was like, oh, okay, but I hadn't had it in years, right? And it makes me wonder too if these breweries aren't changing or whatever.
well, you know, that's
whatever
how I
they're
feel
doing.
about Sierra Nevada.
Right. So I was really excited about having Budvar in Prague, you know. And the first one we had, I was just like, man, I can't even drink this beer. It is so buttery. It tastes like caramel popcorn. It's just disgusting. And Fritz looked at me and he goes, man, I can't drink this beer. It's fucking awful. It's terrible. And I was like, man, I agree. I can't drink it. And our assumption was that it was a bad line. Because we all know Budvar, right? Or Czechvar or whatever,
I know
right?
the name.
I think there are a lot of beers that, when you drink them here, they're wonderful and tasty things because they've aged out imperfections.
It may be.
And then
It may be.
In
some
the
of
shipping
it.
process, they lose
Right.
the imperfections, but tasting
So
them
anyway,
fresh, they're
we went
part
to
of the character
two
there.
went to two other bars, and it tasted exactly the same. I mean, exactly the same. And it almost makes me wonder if they don't clean it up to bring it over here. I mean, it was absolutely mind blowing to me.
That wouldn't surprise me at all if they brewed a different version to send over here.
I mean, it was amazing at how buttery and so the two beers that I enjoyed the most when I was in Prague was Pilsner Urquell and Staropramen. I love Staropramen, and I think it absolutely sucks here. I just don't like it at all here. But I was blown away at how great it was over there. It was a little more balanced than Pilsner Urquell, but you know, I'm going back to Prague this November. So, boom.
Well, I'm looking forward to tasting some of the stuff you bring back because
Absolutely.
what you've said is
He's not bringing anything back for you.
Yes, that's all I'm bringing back this time. I'm not bringing.
only really cool
I'm-
English guys that we
I-
regularly
Yeah, that's
abuse
it.
do
That's
that
it.
shit.
That's
I'm not
all.
I'm not bringing any smoked beers back this year. That was last year.
Oh.
I don't even think I'm going to go to Bamberg
Thank
this year.
God for that.
Well, I think really one of the
One
things
guy
that
said this.
having Jeremy on here and talking about this on a homebrew level, one of
Yeah.
the things that I think that I'd like everybody to take from this conversation is to not be afraid of brewing lagers and to go out and try them. Now, it's going to take you a couple tries to get it where
Yeah.
you want it to be.
Yeah.
But honestly,
You've
are
been
there
brewing
any
this a
beers
lot,
you
right?
brewed that
Yeah,
didn't take you a
exactly.
couple tries
Yeah.
to get them right?
No.
You know,
I'm not gonna lie. Yes, and they all came out of kits from professional brewers.
But still, on the fermentation side, everything
Oh no,
it takes a little bit of trial and error.
Everything
Yeah.
else, yes.
So it's a little bit different set of parameters that you have to play around with. But
Say what?
Butter. Right there.
All right.
It
Butter.
tasted differently
From a
straight from
brewery
the
who
draft.
shall
and
not
Lone
be
Pine.
named.
but
That's
don't be
butter, right
afraid of lagers. Do some
Yeah.
research.
Oh, God.
Holy
Wow, that was
shit.
loud as
What?
shit.
Don't be afraid of the Reaper.
That was a lot of butter.
Well, I would say though that the main thing with lagers is really you need to go in with a plan. You need to
That's
really pay
disappointing.
attention
I'm
to
just
your
saying.
your
That must be a
fermentation.
Czech Pils.
Yeah. You got to know your brewery. Am I right? Know your
Yeah.
brewery, know your ingredients, how your yeast reacts,
No, I'm not. That's
Or-
terrible.
works. And yeah, I mean, you can't brew a Pilsner once and then
Right.
And Jeremy,
First,
oh,
the
I'm
first
done.
time I brewed this recipe,
it sucked. I'm
I've
done.
only done a Pilsner twice,
Yeah.
and it was the same exact recipe. The first time it came out like crap. The second time it came out stellar.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not that. That's a pretty easy learning curve.
Right. And
Go from
I mean, that's
2
every
beers,
beer
you know.
homebrewers do. I mean,
Right.
Well, I'm just gonna I'm
My
gonna give
first
you
two
mad
Pilsners
props,
are awesome.
dude. Jeremy, I mean, I don't say that a lot, but man, those 2 beers you brewed
Thanks,
were
man.
No, without a doubt. Those
freaking
were absolutely
incredible.
outstanding beers.
And it's the IREX Pils.
IREX pills on both.
And the what was it? The Omega,
Omega.
Augustiner strain, right?
Yeah, Bayern
what was
Lager.
it? Bayern Lager. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say I did brew a NE IPA, which I tasted Golden Promise and the IREX Pale Ale malt next to
Yeah.
each other, and I couldn't really tell a difference.
Yeah.
But-
well, that's common.
In the grain room, and then I just used IREX
I
pills,
feel
and it
like
was
it's a
awesome.
cross
Pale Ale.
between Golden Promise and Marisol.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
Yeah.
So I was kind of
Well,
impressed.
it's I think the biggest problem that people have with that pale ale is it is a European 2-row.
It's like that.
It's like a
Avant-garde
pale ale. It's
we
like
used to carry.
it's a European 2-row.
Yeah.
And you're going to get a little more flavor from it. You're going to
Yeah.
get a little more
Yeah.
biscuity. You can cut it with pills. And
Yeah,
it's just like,
I wouldn't substitute it for an American 2-row, but I would absolutely substitute it for any English 2-row.
Yeah.
Well, I think you could totally, and 90% of our commercial customers are doing this. Is they're substituting it.
See,
With their
I'm not
2-row.
sure I'd do it 100%, but
Well, I'm
Cut
just
it,
saying. I'm
blend
just
it.
saying that.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
I
it's
mean-
only one love bond different.
Right.
But what I will say that some of the guys are doing is they're actually taking it and cutting it with the IREX Pils.
but I don't know if
maybe
it's down to the color
quarter.
difference. I think more the
Well, I think
flavor.
a lot of the people that are using it are going, "Oh my God, this has so much more flavor than American 2-row.
yeah. Oh no, American 2-row
It has no flavor."
But I'm thinking German 2-row
So-
to English 2-row.
But
Yeah, well, and the reason I'm saying that is because that American 2-row has zero flavor.
Right.
It has zero.
Yeah.
It has zero malt flavor in comparison to your European pale 2-row,
yeah,
whatever.
and I would say flavor influence.
Right.
You know, I mean,
So it does meld well with other styles of beer,
yeah. American
craft
2
beer especially, because
American 2-row's got its place, and it does what it needs to do, right?
blend it.
well, yeah,
gonna say.
and I'm just saying that most people are using so much hops and so much yeast and so much different flavors,
Right.
that it actually your beers benefit from having a little more malt character than just a straight up American 2-row.
Right.
So that's just my 2 cents, and I'm gonna leave it like that.
Alrighty.
That was the real
Yeah.
Stubby's tip.
So in future episodes, we plan to stop by our friends at Turning Point to see how things are going. You may remember Turning Point. We had them in here a while back, and they were talking about their New England IPAs. They're our local New England IPA brewery. And
I want to pull up.
personally, I'm a big fan of theirs. We had some of their beer tonight, and I just really love it.
Awesome.
So we're going to be working on copying one of their recipes with some of our previous guests in a new series of segments about cloning your favorite recipes. We'll also be discussing a recent golden ale experiment and getting into some in-store competitions using a variety of spices. Again, please be sure to check out our Patreon account at patreon.com/.
Oh, we forgot to do the drawing, dude.
That's okay.
We can do it.
Well, were we going to do it on air?
We can still do
We
it.
were,
Come to
yeah.
the
But
end.
we'll do
come
it
to
after
the
the
end.
fact.
We will announce the winner on the next podcast.
Come to the
Yeah,
end
there
of
you
the
go.
text.
Again, be sure to check out our Patreon account at patreon.com/Come and Brew It Radio to help support the show. We have $2, $5, $10, and $20 options because every little bit counts. Plus,
Yeah,
we
quit being a
want to
cheap
reward
bastard.
you while you help keep the show going, get involved, and improve it. In fact, we literally reward a lucky Patreon on every show with a kit or some swag at the end of every month with something interesting. That's the drawing that we're talking about.
Starting
And
this
we're going to
week.
give you a couple
Starting this
big,
week.
cool swag things
Right.
and stuff.
So thanks again for listening to Come and Brew It Radio. Be sure to share with your friends on social media. Give us some ratings on iTunes and Stitcher. And send any ideas or comments to info@texasbrewinginc.com. Also, you can always check in on the Brew Days of the Guys at their brew-focused Facebook pages at Brew with Stubby, Brew with Brando, Brew with Mikey B, Brew with Chris, Brew with Greg, and recently, Brew with Nigel.
Yes,
Nigel!
Yes!
Come and brew it.
Come and brew it.
Come and brew it.